down, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
Bumblebee movie Arcee is a landmark in fembot engineering. She really pushed the envelope and showed the female Transformers can be brilliant without relying on excessive backpacks. Unfortunately, a lot of the community didn't really see it that way. They just complained, why is she so big? And the answer to that is, she's a deluxe. Of course she's going to be that size, but a lot of people still complain about that. And as a result, Hasbro had to pivot with their next Arcee. With all those complaints, Core Class seemed like the perfect outing. But unfortunately, a lot of people complain about that as well. Seems as if the Transformers community isn't happy with anything. What's new, pussycat? Whoa! But let's remove that context for a bit. Let's actually look at the figure itself as a Core Class figure. We don't get a lot of Movieverse Core Class figures, but when we do, they can often be hit or miss. I mean, Laserbeak was very much a miss, but Arcee? Perhaps she could make things a bit better. So, what else is there to do, except take a closer look? You know, there's one thing I feel bike formers don't get enough credit for. No two bike formers transform the same. With cars, you can often get away with the same transformation. With jets, they sort of just come out of the underside. Well, most of the time anyway. With bikes, most of them transform in completely different ways. It's just something I've noticed over the years. And Arcee is another fantastic example of that. She transforms in an incredibly clever way, manages to hide a lot of the kibble in bike mode really well. I do genuinely think that this is the best alt mode rendition of the character from the film. There've been some other gimmicky ones that people have claimed are better over the years, but I just look at the bike mode and I look at the way that they're done and it just doesn't hit me the same. This is a fantastic Core Class bike mode. Really, the only big criticism I have is that the hands back here do look a little bit out of place. But I mean, it's a Core Class figure / Legends figure. What you really gonna do about that? This thing is absolutely covered in paint from head to toe. You've got all this paint at the top here with the silver, with the stone gray and the red. There is so much red on this thing. In fact, most of the red in this mode is paint. Really, only the arms at the back there are plastic. Everything else is paint. I adore the gold wheel rims. It's not something they really had to do, but they went above and beyond with this Core Class figure. You can tell they really loved the design and they really wanted to do it right. I don't have much to complain about with this bike mode overall. I mean, it's a bit chunky at the front here with how the legs fold up, but I really don't see what else they could have done. Maybe some molded details at the front there would have been nice, but that is where the pelvis section is, so it would have made the robot mode look a bit weird. It's still sculpted in a way that looks really nice, and I still like that they've got all the details like the petrol cap, nice pink down the middle, again with the gold. It's just a really nice bike mode. One thing that's a little bit interesting though, when you stand her, yeah, I can stand her right here, right now, easy. She does have dedicated landing gear, but it's a little bit weird. That right there is the weapon storage, and I adore having weapon storage on Core Class figures, and this one's really well thought out. And that is how she stands properly, but there is a little bit of a trick to it. I haven't actually pushed it in all the way. If I push it in a little bit further, she can't stand. That might seem a little bit weird, but I kind of like the way that works, because when it's fully in, you can have her swooshing from side to side in whatever pose you'd like. Maybe stop motion fans will get a kick out of it. But then if you want her to actually stand, you just push it in a little bit, but not all the way, and she stands like a champ. I think it's a real smart way to do that at the price point mentioned. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it was unintentional, I don't think I'll ever know, but still, they've done a really good job here. Anywho, size-wise, she is roughly 9.5 centimeters long, 5 centimeters tall, and 3 centimeters wide. And for ye old size comparisons, here she is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, which I guess she is by design, but this does show that she's a bit smaller than your standard Core Class outing. Of course not cassette size, but still reasonably smaller, which is probably why they're able to go ham on the paint. A standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not so standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs. Now, as I said before, the transformations on bike formers are never identical. The closest I can compare this to is Hunt for the Decepticons Backfire, which I know was used as other figures first, but that was my primary introduction to the mold as a kid. But it does feel sort of similar to that with the way the arms work and sort of the legs, but it also does its own thing. First thing you of course want to do is remove the gun at the bottom for the weapon storage. Oh no, weapon parts forming. Separate the arms at the top, which will untab the wheels from there. That will allow you to accordion the legs out like so. You rotate the torso up there, separate the arms and bring them down. The head clicks into place there. Separate the legs like so, rotate the wheel to the side, and then you can bring up the backpack like that. Then you can bring the legs legs down like that, and the wheels can rotate into place and click in there, and you are basically done. And yeah, I really like the robot mode. Probably not as much as the vehicle mode or the transformation that got us here. I think the transformation is the highlight of the figure, but it is done really well for a core class outing. A lot of it does rely on fake parts. You've got a fake chest there, which a lot of people really hated. But I've never really been one to dislike faux parts. I think they serve a purpose, especially at a price point like this. And I mean, the alternative is a really shitty bike mode, so I see why they did it. Portions are pretty damn good. She's sculpted really well. There's all the nice sculpting here. I kind of dig the face sculpt. It's not the best Arcee face sculpt I've come across recently, but it's a nice improvement on what we saw in the Studio Series Deluxe. It's painted really well with the pink face and gunmetal around the eyes and blue on the eyes. The smaller size of this thing has really allowed them to go nuts on the paint. In most instances, the paint is done extremely well, although there are problems I will get to. Unfortunately, given that she relies on faux parts a lot, she does have a lot of kibble on the back. You've got the wheels just sitting here and this part sticking out the butt. It does look more like a backpack, but you can see it is separate from everything else. But it is manageable, and if you really want to avoid it, you can take off this wheel. It's not parts forming so much as just being able to store it in the box properly, but it's entirely optional, and I don't think I'll personally use it, because otherwise she's just left with a big butt flap that just sticks out of nowhere, and I'm not really a fan of that. One thing that really works well is the articulation. You got the ball jointed head, which works quite well. Shoulders are on ball joints, and elbows are on ball joints, as you'd expect. But then she's got a waist swivel, which is really lovely. Granted, the waist swivel is separate from the backpack here, but you can still get some really nice poses. And for a core class figure, that is insane. Everything else works about as well as you'd expect. You got the ball jointed hips here. Still got a nice solid 90, even with the kibble there. And that's your lot, really. But still, that waist swivel does a lot with the posing. It does really well. Probably one of my favorite live-action film core class figures to pose. Well, at least until Starscream came along. Of course, there are things I do take issue with, the biggest issue being the paint, which might seem weird. I mean, I just praise the paint. The paint is fantastic. I mean, look at this torso here. You got all the same layers as you did in vehicle mode. That's got to count for something, right? Well, it does, but there are other issues as well. See, that right there isn't actually paint chipping. That is actually them not painting it properly. And instead of coating it properly, it sort of just moved to the sides of the angle on the thigh there, which, it's just unfinished. There is no other way to describe that defect on my copy. It is unfinished paint. And I guess they had to rush this out to get the release date of the films, but still, that's not really an excuse in my book. Also, the paint on the shoulders is that chalky kind of stuff that I hate. Most often seen with white paint in general. I think the worst examples were Earthrise Barricade and Run Amok. But it's the same kind of paint here, and it's not in that big of a place, so it's pretty easy to ignore, but it is something that irks me personally. But other than that, I genuinely don't have a lot of complaints to make about this. It is a fantastic core class figure. It's just an absolute joy to mess with, and it makes me wish we had more of these. They really don't do enough core class figures in the movieverse, and when they do, often they can be pretty clunky. But we get gems like this, and I absolutely adore that. Also, her accessory is adorable, and her other accessory is hilarious. Now, size-wise, she's roughly 5 centimeters by 9 centimeters. Actually, twist around and show the centimeters, not the inches. Damn it. Come on, I'm not American. And for size comparisons, here she is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard core class figure, again showing that she's a lot denser, a lot smaller, and that allows them to go absolute ham on the paint applications. I just wish the paint applications were done a little bit better, then she'd basically be perfect. A standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and of course, Crumbs. I don't get the complaints about this Arcee. The engineering is great, the articulation's really good for the size, the kibble management is pretty good. Really, the only one that I guess kind of makes sense is the size. Maybe it would have been better as a deluxe, but people didn't want a deluxe when Bumblebee Movie Arcee came out. And then they did want a deluxe when Rise of the Beasts Arcee came out. So now for Elita 1 and Transformers 1, they're making her a deluxe. It doesn't make any sense. It is very confusing. But at least we got a wonderful Arcee out of it. Free from all the context, this is probably one of the best core class figures they've done. It has its issues, particularly in the build quality department, with the painting. Yeah, that could be a bit better. But as a figure in its own right, it just does a lot of really cool stuff. Maybe a lot of that comes down to the fact that I love Legends figures. I mean, I'm doing a whole month of them. I'm doing a whole month about my love for the scale. But still, this is a wonderful Legends figure, and if you're on the fence about it, I would definitely go for it. At least I'd go for that over one of the gimmick ones. People still say those are great, but they look terrible. Why are you going for that? F off. But tomorrow, I think it's time for another full review. We've done a bunch of these small ones again, so let's mix things up a bit. There's been this certain toy line that I've been really getting into as of late, and I know I received some of them for free, but genuinely, they were bloody brilliant. I want to talk about them some more. I I want to talk about what makes them so special. So, see you tomorrow!